While most 8-year-olds collect trading cards and complain about homework, Emma spends her evenings in silence, fixing broken electronics with steady hands and sketching impossible circuits in a weathered notebook. She rides the city bus each day with her mother to the gleaming towers of Nexus Technologies, where invisibility isn't just a choice, it's survival. Welcome to the Black Side Stories. Before we continue, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe to our channel and help us share their stories. And no one knows Emma exists. No one sees her potential. No one imagines that brilliance can bloom in the margins of a world that measures worth by credentials and corner offices. But when a devastating cyber attack brings the entire company to its knees, it's Emma, not the engineers, not the executives, not the highly paid consultants, who understands what's really happening. And when she quietly asks to try something, everything changes. How can a child the world forgot become the one to save it? And what happens when genius refuses to stay hidden? Stay with us to discover how true brilliance grows in silence, and why being seen can transform everything. Emma walked exactly 6 steps behind her mother through the marble corridors of Nexus Technologies. Not because she was told to, but because she'd learned that distance was protection. Her mother moved like water around obstacles, never hurried, never apologetic, never acting like she belonged in spaces built for people who wore suits instead of uniforms. Invisibility, Emma had discovered, was a kind of superpower. She clutched her frayed backpack against her chest, careful not to let the broken zipper catch. Inside were her treasures: a notebook filled with circuit diagrams, a digital watch that flickered between time zones, and a cracked USB drive that no longer worked but somehow still held promise. The security guard at the employee entrance never looked at Emma. He processed her mother's badge with mechanical efficiency, muttered "Floor 39," and returned to his crossword puzzle. To him, Emma was just another shadow in a building full of shadows. While her mother disappeared into service elevators, Emma claimed her usual spot on the lobby bench. She pulled out her notebook and began sketching, not the doodles of a bored child, but precise technical drawings that would have impressed university professors. Today's project was ambitious: a theoretical motherboard that could communicate wirelessly with any device. She'd glimpsed something similar in a YouTube video she wasn't supposed to watch, and though she barely remembered the specifics, the concept had taken root in her mind like a seed in fertile soil. Her pencil moved with quiet confidence, following logic pathways that existed only in her imagination. Around her, the business world hummed with its usual rhythm: sharp heels clicking against marble, impatient voices discussing quarterly projections, the soft whoosh of elevator doors. Emma barely noticed. She was deep in her own universe, where broken things could be made whole and impossible ideas could become reality. That's when the lights flickered. The first sign was subtle, a brief dimming of the overhead lights, like the building taking a shallow breath. Emma paused, pencil hovering over her notebook. Then every screen in the lobby blinked to black simultaneously, as if someone had thrown a switch on the entire digital world. The change was instantaneous. Murmurs became voices. Voices became shouts. Phones appeared in hands like magic tricks, only to display error messages and spinning wheels of digital despair. "What do you mean we're locked out?" Someone barked into their phone near the reception desk. A woman in an expensive suit sprinted across the lobby, her heels echoing like gunshots. "Remote failsafe isn't responding." She called to no one in particular. Emma remained perfectly still, watching chaos unfold around her. The polished perfection of Nexus Technologies was unraveling in real time, and she found herself fascinated rather than frightened that a cluster of engineers near the elevators were already trading technical theories. In overlapping voices, "Kernel override," one suggested. "Malware vector," whispered another. "This can't be random. Someone targeted the core infrastructure." Emma recognized the terminology from her late-night research sessions. She'd studied enough about cybersecurity to understand that panic was spreading faster than solutions. These people, brilliant in their own right, were trapped in protocols and procedures that had suddenly become useless. She flipped to a fresh page in her notebook and began writing what she would have done: isolate the breach point. Determine if the attack was internal or external. Check for traffic anomalies. Look for patterns in the chaos. The difference between Emma and everyone else in that lobby wasn't just knowledge, it was perspective. While they saw a catastrophe, she saw puzzle pieces waiting to be arranged. When someone mentioned that the biggest client presentation of the year was scheduled for this afternoon, Emma understood why the fear was so palpable. This wasn't just a technical failure. It was a targeted disruption designed to cause maximum damage at the worst possible moment. For the first time in her life, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Not just curiosity, but recognition. She looked down at her notes, seeing patterns emerge like constellations in a night sky. This wasn't random. Someone had orchestrated this attack with surgical precision, locking down the system without destroying it. They'd frozen it, which meant the infrastructure was still intact, waiting for someone who knew where to look. Emma breathed slowly, her mind racing. She'd felt this way before, when she'd opened her first broken computer and discovered that junk was just another word for misunderstood. Watching the chaos unfold, she felt something unmistakable. I know what this is. The glass-walled conference room had become a war room. Expensive suits mixed with wrinkled hoodies as Nexus Technologies' best minds stared at screens filled with red warnings and error messages. A global map displayed their network infrastructure, every node painted crimson like a spreading infection. Emma inched closer, invisible among the panic. She hugged her notebook tighter, watching faces that usually radiated confidence now twisted with confusion and fear. This can't be internal, a heavy-set man declared, slamming his fist on the table. We've got triple firewalls after Singapore. Then it's a ghost protocol, a woman replied. Something designed to mimic normal user behavior. Emma listened to their theories, understanding more than they realized. They were asking the wrong questions, looking for complex solutions to what might be an elegantly simple problem. Someone attempted a manual override, fingers flying across keyboards only to be met with rejection codes. Blocked again. Level 4. Encryption. Who builds this stuff? Someone who really wants us offline, came the bitter response. Emma forgot her first rule of invisibility. She took a half step forward and, before she could stop herself, said quietly, "Have you checked the socket overflow loop?" The words landed like a stone in still water. Heads turned. Someone snorted. What did she say? Another voice, dismissive. Who let a kid in here? But one woman, younger than the others, with kind eyes, looked at Emma thoughtfully. She didn't laugh or dismiss. She simply listened. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd broken her cardinal rule: stay invisible, stay safe. But before she could retreat, a voice from the back of the room spoke up. Her question makes sense. The speaker was Tyler, according to his badge. Maybe 25, standing apart from the main group. He wasn't shouting or typing frantically. He was thinking. It's a logical entry point for a recursive lockout, Tyler continued, looking at Emma and then back at the others. Especially if the attacker wanted to make it look like user error. The room fell silent. Emma swallowed hard, unsure whether she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life or stumbled into something extraordinary. Let's not pretend anyone in this room has a better lead, Tyler added quietly. And just like that, Emma was no longer invisible. Whether they liked it or not, she was part of the conversation. They let her try because they had nothing left to lose. It wasn't confidence or trust. It was desperation disguised as open-mindedness. Sure, why not? The IT lead muttered sarcastically. Maybe the cleaning lady's kid can solve what our entire division couldn't. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Tyler pulled out a chair and positioned it at the terminal. You'll need to stand on this, he said gently. The desk's too high. Emma climbed up with the quiet dignity of someone who'd learned not to flinch at laughter. She studied the screen, a tangle of locked admin layers, frozen diagnostic tools, and firewall rejections that would have intimidated most professionals. But Emma saw something else: patterns, logic, a story written in code by someone who understood systems as well as she did. Her eyes drifted to a small photo frame on the nearby shelf. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, grinning from someone's shoulders. The frame's base bore a tiny engraving. Madison, for AM, welcome to the world. Emma smiled faintly. Then she typed. For Madison, the screen blinked. A new prompt window opened where none had existed before. Did you just? Tyler started, leaning closer. The sarcastic IT lead looked up from his phone, eyes widening. What was that? Emma was already 2 layers deeper, navigating with the muscle memory of someone who'd spent years teaching herself to speak the language of machines. Her fingers moved without hesitation, following pathways that felt as familiar as breathing. That override key, one engineer whispered. We didn't even try personal-based authentication. We don't have personal-based fallbacks, another replied, confused. Emma kept working, deaf to their amazement. She'd found the admin shell by understanding something they'd missed. This wasn't just a technical attack. It was personal. Someone had exploited the most human vulnerability of all, a father's love for his daughter, encoded in the passwords he thought no one would guess. The woman from earlier stepped closer. She's in the system. Tyler knelt beside Emma's chair. What are you looking for now? Emma's voice was steady, matter-of-fact. The entry pattern. If I can trace how they got in, I can reverse the lockout. She navigated logs and error reports with the intuition of someone who'd learned to read between the lines of digital chaos. This wasn't random destruction. It was surgical, elegant, designed by someone who understood systems as intimately as she did. When the first layer of encryption fell away and static red warnings began clearing from the main display, no one was laughing anymore. That Emma's discovery went deeper than simple password cracking. As she navigated the system's architecture, she realized the attack wasn't just sophisticated, it was familiar. The code fragments she found contained patterns she'd seen before in late-night explorations of forgotten forums and abandoned tutorials. Whoever had written this shared her unconventional education, her self-taught approach to understanding systems from the inside out. This person learned the same way I did, she said quietly, still typing. Alone, Tyler, watching over her shoulder, saw something that made his blood run cold. The attack wasn't random vandalism, it was a message, a demonstration, a proof of concept that someone brilliant and invisible had chosen destruction over creation. Emma followed the logic trails deeper, recognizing the signature style of someone who'd grown up in the digital margins. Every recursive loop, every hidden pathway, every clever misdirection spoke to a mind that had learned to navigate by instinct rather than instruction. They're not trying to destroy the system, Emma realized. They're trying to prove they understand it better than anyone else. The revelation was both thrilling and terrifying. Emma had found her digital mirror, someone whose brilliance had grown in the same shadows, but who'd chosen a different path. As she worked to unravel the attack, Emma felt the weight of possibility. This ghost in the machine could have been her future, brilliant, angry, and invisible. Instead, she was here, seen and supported, using her gifts to build rather than break. The choice between creation and destruction, she realized, often came down to a single moment of recognition. Someone believing in you instead of overlooking you. Someone offering opportunity instead of dismissal. Emma had been lucky. Her ghost in the machine had not. Robert Hayes, CEO of Nexus Technologies, had built his empire on data, efficiency, and calculated risk. But watching Emma work through security footage later that evening, he found himself confronting something that defied all his metrics. Pure, undeniable brilliance emerging from the most unlikely source. That he rewound the footage again, studying Emma's posture, her methodical approach, the way she navigated complex systems with the confidence of someone who'd been born speaking their language. This wasn't luck or beginner's fortune. This was mastery. The memory hit him like a physical blow, a dirt path outside an orphanage, a girl about Emma's age sitting with a broken radio, her fingers blackened with grease and her eyes bright with possibility. She'd told him once that if she could fix the radio, maybe she could hear voices from a better place. One day, the radio had worked. The girl had laughed with pure joy. The next day, she was gone, disappeared into a system that had no room for children who didn't fit conventional molds. Robert had survived by forgetting, by moving forward, by building walls between his past and his present. But Emma had torn those walls down with nothing more than a notebook and a willingness to see patterns where others saw chaos. He thought about the security guards he'd almost called, the dismissive comments from his own team, the way brilliance so often went unrecognized simply because it came in unexpected packages. Emma had cracked more than his system. She'd cracked his assumptions about where genius lived and how it announced itself. The question now wasn't just what she'd done, but what it meant for every other invisible child sitting in lobbies and corners and margins, waiting for someone to notice that extraordinary minds don't always come with extraordinary credentials. The neutral meeting ground was a small diner on the edge of downtown. The kind of place where coffee came in thick mugs and conversations could happen without the weight of corporate hierarchies pressing down. Robert Hayes sat across from Emma and her mother, looking more like a tired father than a tech mogul. He'd traded his suit for jeans and a simple shirt, as if stripping away the armor of his position might make the conversation more honest. "Thank you for coming," he said, and meant it that Emma's mother, Maria, wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like it was keeping her warm. Emma did nothing wrong. She only tried to help. "I know," Robert replied, "and I'm more grateful than I can express." He looked at Emma, who was drawing patterns in the condensation on her water glass. "Emma, what do you want to do when you grow up?" It was such an ordinary question, but Emma's answer was anything but ordinary. "I want to understand things," she said simply. "How they work, how to fix them when they break, how to make them better." Robert smiled, not his boardroom smile, but something genuine and warm. "I have a proposition. There's a program for kids with exceptional abilities. Full scholarship plus housing assistance. The best teachers, the best equipment, real mentorship." Maria set down her coffee cup carefully. "What kind of program?" "The kind that recognizes brilliance wherever it comes from," Robert said. "The kind that doesn't care about test scores or recommendation letters. It cares about potential." Emma felt something flutter in her chest. Not quite hope, because hope was dangerous, but something close to it. "Would I have to go away?" she asked quietly. "No," Robert said firmly. "You'd stay here with your mother. The program comes to you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Emma saved my company. But more than that, she showed me something I'd forgotten. That genius doesn't always announce itself with credentials. Sometimes it sits quietly in corners, invisible until the moment the world needs it most." Maria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And what do you want in return?" Robert looked directly at Emma. "I want to make sure that the next time someone like Emma is sitting in a lobby, brilliant and invisible, someone notices. I want to build something better than what we had before." Emma looked at her mother, who was trying not to cry. She thought about her notebook, about the circuits she drew in margins, about all the broken things she'd fixed with tape and patience and hope. For the first time in her life, someone was offering her a chance to be seen not as a problem to be solved, but as a person worth investing in. "Okay," she said simply, and in that single word, 3 lives changed direction forever. 6 months later, Emma's world had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. She still lived in the same apartment, still rode the bus with her mother, but now she had resources that matched her ambitions. Dr. Sarah Chun visited twice a week, bringing university-level coursework and infinite patience for Emma's questions. That spiraled into brilliant tangents. "You're thinking about network topology again," Dr. Chun observed, watching Emma sketch during their latest session. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "If you design connections like a web instead of a tree, each node can compensate when others fail. It's stronger because it's more like how thoughts work, multiple pathways to the same destination." But the real change wasn't in Emma's technical skills, it was in her confidence. She stood straighter, spoke louder, looked people in the eye. The invisible girl was learning to trust that her voice mattered. Meanwhile, Tyler had been promoted to lead a new initiative, unconventional talent identification. His mission was to find other Emmas before they disappeared into the cracks of a system that didn't know how to see them. "It's not about finding the next Emma," he explained to his team. "It's about creating a world where the next Emma doesn't have to wait for a crisis to be noticed." Robert Hayes had kept his promise in ways that surprised even him. The scholarship program had expanded to include 12 children from unconventional backgrounds. More importantly, Nexus had restructured its hiring practices to prioritize problem-solving ability over traditional qualifications. But Emma's investigation into the original attack had continued. Late at night, she followed digital breadcrumbs, deeper into corners of the internet where others feared to go. The ghost in the machine had left traces, patterns, signatures that spoke to someone who understood their language. What she discovered made her hands shake as she typed. The hacker wasn't just someone like her. The hacker was someone she knew. The abandoned warehouse looked like every other forgotten building in the industrial district, but Emma could read the signs others would miss. Modified electrical boxes, subtle antenna arrays, strategic placement of condemned signs that discouraged curiosity without actually preventing access. She shouldn't have come alone, but some conversations could only happen in the spaces between what adults considered safe and what was actually necessary. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into a digital sanctuary. Servers hummed quietly in the dim light. Cables ran along the ceiling like technological ivy. Workstations cobbled together from salvaged parts created a testimony to making something extraordinary from nothing. "Hello, Alex," Emma said quietly. Figure at the central keyboard froze, then slowly turned around. Alex was older than Emma, maybe 16, with dark circles under their eyes and clothes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. But their face was familiar from the community center, from bus stops where kids who didn't fit anywhere else waited for rides to schools that didn't quite want them. "Emma," Alex said, voice carrying surprise and something that might have been relief. "I wondered when you'd figure it out." Emma looked around the makeshift data center. "You built all this?" Alex nodded. 3 years, piece by piece. Most of it salvage, but it works better than what most companies have. "What?" Emma asked. "Why did you attack Nexus?" Alex pulled up a screen filled with data, names, locations, stories of invisible brilliance. "Do you know how many kids like us are out there? Kids who could change the world if anyone bothered to notice them." The stories made Emma's throat tight. Teenagers sleeping in shelters while teaching themselves advanced mathematics, young people whose brilliance was buried under poverty and circumstance, minds that could solve impossible problems if given the chance. "So you decided to break things?" Emma asked. Alex laughed bitterly. "I decided to prove a point, that the systems people rely on are built by people who don't understand them. I wanted to show them that their assumptions were wrong." Emma was quiet, thinking. She understood the anger, the frustration of being brilliant and invisible. But she also understood something else. "You did hurt people," she said finally. "You scared them. You made them feel helpless. The way they make us feel helpless every day." "No," Emma said, her voice steady. "Better." She sat down on a nearby crate. "They gave me a chance. Not because I proved I could break their system, but because I proved I could fix it. Because I showed them that understanding and building is more powerful than understanding and destroying." Alex stared at her. "You really think that's possible?" Emma smiled. "Help me find the others. The kids in your database. Help me reach them before they disappear. Help me build something that matters." For the first time since Emma had arrived, Alex smiled back. "You know they'll never trust me. Not after what I did." "They didn't trust me either," Emma said. "I was just the janitor's daughter." But sometimes the people who've been invisible longest are the ones who see the clearest. 6 months later, Emma stood in front of a room full of teenagers in the renovated warehouse, now transformed into something between a tech startup and a community center. Natural light streamed through new skylights, and whiteboards covered the walls with code, circuits, and dreams made visible. "The hardest part isn't learning to code," Emma was saying. "It's learning to believe that your ideas matter." In the front row, Maya nodded intently. She'd been living in her car before Tyler's scouts found her building apps on a cracked tablet in a 24-hour diner. Next to her, David, who'd taught himself hardware engineering from dumpster electronics, was sketching security system improvements. These were Alex's kids, the invisible ones from the database, the ones who'd been slipping through cracks until someone finally bothered to look down and see brilliance shining back up. Alex stood at the back of the room. No longer the angry, isolated hacker Emma had found, but something more complex. A mentor who understood both the power of gifts and the danger of letting them grow in darkness. "Remember," Emma continued, "code isn't just about solving problems. It's about conversation. Every line you write is talking to someone. And the most important conversation you can have is the one where you prove that brilliance doesn't require permission." At the back of the room, Robert Hayes watched quietly. He'd been coming to these sessions for weeks, not as a CEO making charitable appearances, but as someone learning to see potential in places he'd forgotten to look. What had started as one girl's moment of visibility was becoming a movement. 12 other cities had requested to replicate their program. The network was growing exponentially, connections forming faster than anyone could track. But Emma wasn't thinking about the bigger picture. She was focused on Maya, who had just asked a question about recursive functions that made Emma's heart skip with recognition. What if you're building something and you can't see all the connections yet? Maya asked. What if you know it should work, but you're missing pieces? Emma smiled. Then you start with what you can see. You build the connections you understand and trust that the pattern will show you the rest. The most important thing is to keep building, even when you can't see the whole structure yet. After the session, Emma walked outside into the evening air. The industrial district looked different now, still rough, but somehow more alive. Other organizations were moving in, attracted by the energy radiating from their converted warehouse. Her mother waited by the bus stop, no longer alone. Other parents had started coming too, parents of kids who finally had a place where being unusual was not just accepted, but celebrated. How was today? Her mother asked in Spanish. Good, Emma replied. Maya's building something beautiful. They sat together, watching city lights flicker on. Emma scrolled through messages, updates from other cities, questions from potential students, code snippets shared by kids learning to see themselves as builders rather than breakers. The network was growing organically, connections forming naturally. Networks that grew this way were always stronger than ones built from blueprints. What are you thinking about? Her mother asked. Emma looked up at the stars becoming visible despite the city's glow. About patterns. About how sometimes the most important thing you can do is help someone else see their own brilliance. As they boarded the bus, Emma thought about the email she'd received that morning from an 11-year-old in Detroit who'd built a water filtration system from plastic bottles after her building's pipes failed. The girl's message was simple. I think I understand things, but no one sees me. Can you help? Emma was already composing her reply as the bus pulled away. The network was growing, and there was room for everyone who'd ever sat invisible in corners, dreaming in code, waiting for someone to notice that brilliance doesn't always announce itself with credentials. Sometimes it just sits quietly, sketching circuits in worn notebooks, until the moment the world needs it most. And when that moment comes, the most powerful thing anyone can do is reach out and say, I see you. Now let me help the world see you too. The bus rolled through city streets, carrying Emma toward home and tomorrow's possibilities, while behind them the warehouse glowed with young minds learning to build rather than break, to connect rather than destroy, to be seen rather than remain invisible. The code was spreading, one line at a time, one life at a time, one connection at a time. In the end, Emma had learned the most important lesson of all. True power isn't in breaking systems or proving you can tear things down. True power is in building networks that catch the falling, in creating connections that turn isolation into community, in transforming the invisible into the essential. The network effect was real, and it was growing. And at its heart was a simple truth that Emma had discovered in a corporate lobby and carried into the world. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone has something to contribute. And the most revolutionary act of all is refusing to let brilliance remain hidden in the shadows. The future was being written in code, one connection at a time. And Emma Santos, once invisible, now illuminated, was helping to write it. This has been the Black Side Stories. Until next time, remember, behind every great achievement is someone who stood watch, someone who believed, someone who preserved what matters when no one else was looking.